Some people think these little guys and gals are kind of creepy, but I actually think they have a lot of wisdom to offer us. Put her aside for a second. As most of you know, here in the DC area, we're in the middle of what can only be called cicada palooza. Everywhere we look, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of these wonderful little creatures emerging, coming out of the darkness after 17 years. Well, I spent some time with a cicada recently, spent a couple of hours, and I think the cicadas have a lot to offer us as they shed their skin after 17 years. And we're shedding also, aren't we? They're emerging from darkness, and so are we. And so what do cicadas have to tell us about this time and how we might emerge? Well, as I said, I watched one for a while, one afternoon, and I noticed a few things. First of all, it's a very slow process. It emerges over 5 to 6 weeks, and they take their time coming out, and so might we. As I was watching this cicada emerge from its shell, come out of its shell for the first time in ever, really, but after this period of darkness, the 17 years, I noticed that it came out in stages. There was a little wriggle, a little push, and then it rested. There was wriggle, push, and then rest. And when it got about halfway out of its shell, there was another stage that was added. It was wriggle, push, and then when its wings started to come out, a little flapping, and then rest. So it was wriggle, push, flap, rest. Between each push and each wriggle, there was a time of rest, a time, if you will, for the cicada to get its bearings. And when, after an hour or so, she finally got herself out of that shell and her beautiful, fragile wings had emerged, she rested again and allowed this new fragile being to dry in the wind, to look around, to see what was coming up for her. And of course, she eventually started crawling up that sycamore tree where she was located and went off to find a mate, cut a little notch in the tree, lay her eggs, and then die. Well, there were a few things that I noticed that I thought gave us some perspective on how we might emerge out of our dark time. The first thing that I noticed is that this is a time of absolute and entire transformation. The cicada and we will never be the same. It can't go back. We can't go back. It's forever changed into a new being, and we're forever changed also. The next thing that I noticed was that it came in stages, and each wriggle and push and flap was followed by a period of rest and reflection. They didn't emerge all at once, nor do we. We go through stages that need to be honored and respected. The third thing I noticed was that each of these transformations, each of these emergences, were followed by a time of bearing fruit, laying eggs, new life, that within a couple of months will drop to the ground, enter the earth again, and 17 years later it will emerge. What's inside of us ready to give new life from this experience of pandemic? What is waiting inside of us to be birthed? And the last thing that I noticed, that these cicadas have a brain maybe this big, if that. So how do they know what to do? How do we know what to do? They work almost entirely on instinct. There is within each of these cicadas a deep knowing that's been inside of cicada world for millennia. And so we too, as we emerge from our darkness, throw off our masks, and go through these stages and bear fruit, we too have a deep knowing inside of each of us. We'll have many different names for that: the source, the one, God. But inside each of us, if we open ourselves and allow ourselves to go through these stages, open ourselves to that bearing of fruit, we too will know how we are to emerge. So while they last, if you're able to, you might spend some time with the cicadas. Watch them emerge and see if they offer some clues for you too on how you might emerge from this time.